Hey there, South Plains. Amanda McAfee with Lubbock Area United Way. Today I am joined by Kristin Murray. She is the Executive Director for Voice of Hope, formerly the Lubbock Rape Crisis Center. And they work with all kinds of sexual violence, mostly against women victims, and advocating for them and helping them through the systems when they, either when they arrive at the hospital or police station and sometimes they just come directly to Voice of Hope. And so they work in many, many ways to help victims receive services and counseling and the support they need after they've had the most horrific event of their life. They are also newly in the last several years really working to address sex trafficking in our community, and to really put an end to that horrific crime, and working in conjunction with a lot of folks to get there and do that. So, hey, Kristen, how are you?
I'm doing great, Amanda. How are you today?
I am doing well. We are in a crazy world, and we're about to talk about some hard and crazy things. So I think we probably just better put out there that there is a trigger warning probably on this one,
Yes.
for anybody who has dealt with sexual trauma in their own life. So because we're going to have a little bit harder conversations than some of the other things that we have talked about with other partners. So Kristen, let's just jump in and tell us, what has life looked like for you and your team over the past couple of months?
It's been very strange, but I think we're all kind of in that same situation. I heard somebody say we aren't all in the same boat, but we're all in a boat in the same sea, because all of our COVID situations, all of our quarantining, all of those different things really looked very different for each organization and each household and each individual. With just the different things going on in their life. And so I think we were all going through very similar things, but I don't think we experienced it quite the same way. We were very fortunate that we have some incredible partners in the Lubbock community that we've worked on for the last 45 years. And so we were still able to advocate for our survivors. So anybody who presented in the emergency room or made a call out to LPD was still allowed to have an advocate with them. All of my advocates were still very much engaged, wanting to be there with our clients and making sure that they were getting the best care that they could. And the hospitals supported us in that and allowed us to continue to come in. And so some of our other partner agencies around the state and other counties didn't quite have the welcome that we got in Lubbock. And so we're very appreciative that we were still able to be there with our clients as they needed us in those crisis situations. Our office situation has been a little different like everybody else. We have children that have been at home, and so we took our situation remote. Our 24-hour crisis hotline never missed a beat. All of that transfers to cell phones, so we kept answering that like nothing was going on. And then most of my staff worked from home. We were able to do that remotely. We have 2 counselors that continue to see patients via Zoom through that platform. And so that was actually really good, because I think some of our clients that live out a little bit further from Lubbock and have experienced traumas and maybe have a hard time coming into an office setting, enjoyed the experience of Zoom and getting to do that at home. While some of them certainly missed that human contact, we did try to have advocates check in on them and make sure that they were getting their basic needs met, because we know when your basic needs aren't being met, then you aren't able to mentally take care of yourself either. And so we made runs for food, toilet paper, different things as people told us and shared those needs with us. We tried to make sure that we could get what they needed to their doorstep, because we didn't want them to have to worry about the basic things.
I really like that in metaphor, same sea, different boats. But that's been one of the things that we've had these conversations. I'm so impressed with our community partners and how we've shifted services, but continued providing services, especially when it's the most vulnerable in our community that we're serving. And certainly somebody who is a survivor of a sexual assault or any other sex crime is definitely in vulnerable position. So great that you guys were able to continue to do that. So we were just talking before we started hit the record button that at the same time, things have looked different for you guys. You guys have seen a little bit different trend over the past couple of months. So talk a little bit about that and what you guys are seeing and how what you think the trends are and effects of COVID-19 are for your clientele, for the survivors you serve.
Absolutely. So I'd like to, footnote this is just Kristen's opinion. We are so new in this that we really have no data to support kind of one way or the other. For our cases, we've seen a decrease. We've seen less people willing to get out and report it, whether that's because they're home with their abuser or because they're fearful of getting out with the COVID situation. I don't know. I know that as far as those services, they were definitely quieter during the whole pandemic situation. Counseling, the need for that increased. Our advocates were still definitely talking to people. But one of the highlights that I keep seeing on my email and the different things that I get is everybody talking about trafficking. What has this done to the trafficking population? What has this done to victims of trafficking? And there's a lot of speculation that it has increased trafficking. We have no data to support that. The data that I've been given and that I have seen, we track the ads that are placed on the internet to sell people. Unfortunately, that's the world we live in. And year over year, those ads are actually down. And so we don't know if that's because buyers were more fearful of getting COVID, and so they weren't out actively purchasing it. And so that does still leave certainly the trafficking survivors vulnerable, because if the pimps aren't making money and supporting them, then that puts them in a hard place. They're already in an extremely difficult place where most of the time food and shelter are held against them to make sure that they're making their fair share of what the pimp wants them to bring in. And if they aren't doing that, then I think that puts them at a higher risk to being hurt or being put out on the street because the pimp's not going to be willing to feed them. I also am fearful that we've all been home for months and people have spent too much time online, maybe making relationships with people that they don't really know. And we know that pimps in that particular area will take months in grooming their victim. And so while I have no statistics to support that, I am personally concerned that we've opened ourselves up to being vulnerable, and we know they prey on the vulnerable, and that some of those relationships have probably already started, and that's the path that they're working their future victims down. And so we're trying very hard to make sure that we're educating the community about online safety, about being aware of who you're talking to. And if you're talking to somebody that you don't physically know, do that with an abundance of caution. And our children are on screens and tablets and games probably more than they were before, because let's face it, we were all home. They were trying to do schoolwork. We were still trying to get work done. I think it's just a matter of the day and age that we live in that they are going to get more screen time. And so we have to be very, very cautious about who's watching our children and reaching out to them and forging those friendships.
Yikes. It's hard to really know what to say after that to follow up on that, Kristen. I do have a couple of follow-up questions. For one, I don't know, sex trafficking is reaching a broader audience. More people are starting to understand what that is. But could you let's take a time out, and would you tell a little bit of what that is, what sex trafficking is, how it's different from sexual assault, but can be associated with sexual assault, and there's some connections there. But just let's make sure that people understand what we mean when we're talking about sex trafficking.
Absolutely. So the legal definition is force, fraud, or coercion, which is a little vague and maybe a little hard to understand, but ultimately it's when somebody else is making the decision for you and is selling you for a sexual act, and you are not getting that money. Your pimp is getting that money, so you are not in control. They are holding your driver's license, your birth certificate, something that keeps you from leaving or feeling like you can leave. They're making threats to your family if you leave. Even the addiction of drugs. If they are your drug dealer and they're withholding your drugs and they're tethering themselves to you, it's a position of control. And so they're controlling your ability to make decisions for yourself and your ability to leave. And so sex trafficking is always sexual assault, but sexual assault is not always sex trafficking. And so I think we tend to use all of these different key phrases, but when it comes back to it, sex trafficking is sexual assault over and over and over again. And so the trauma that it leaves on those survivors is just horrific.
Thanks for that. And then I think there's a lot of parents like me that I know have been listening to this, and thinking about, and we've talked about kids a lot, with various ones of our partners, and um, how the crisis is affecting kids, how we parent through the crisis. But I know that screen time thing is not something that we've touched on. And I also know as a parent how many times I have felt guilty for handing my kid a screen over the past couple of weeks, but then at the same time they're doing their schoolwork on screens and I'm trying to get my work done. And so here, have a screen for a little while so that I can get this thing done. And while parents should not feel guilty for that, because it's the world that we've had to all live in for the past several weeks, at the same time, we all want to make sure that our kids are safe online. So can you help us start to form some ideas of ways to keep our kids safe? If we have a concern, what should we be looking for? How can we know, or how can we protect our kids online, I guess is the best way to put that.
Protecting our kids online is a segment all unto its own. And I understand I have a child. We're all surrounded by children, whether we have children or not. We have neighbors, we have nieces, we have nephews. It's that ability to teach them to think outside the box and realize that the person on the other side of that game controller could possibly be somebody other than who they're telling you they are. And their brains just aren't developed enough to understand that. And so they just see it at face value for what it is. Well, if this person who's chatting with me in this Nintendo Switch game or Minecraft or Fortnite or whatever it is they're playing says, well, I'm a 12-year-old boy and I go to a school just maybe a couple districts away from you, they believe them. There is no sense of questioning that or how do I prove that? It's just, oh, well, they're my friend and we're going to play and we're going to chat. And then when things go sideways, they don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about it because they feel like they're going to be in trouble. So I tell people all the time, have open communication with your children. They're going to tell you a lot of things that maybe aren't that big of a deal, or they're going to tell you some things that upset you. Try to really take a deep breath and listen to what they're saying before you react. Because when the little things become the big things, you still want them to come to you for that advice, and you don't want them to turn to the internet, to a search engine, or to their friends to find out, well, this guy's asking me to send him pictures. Should I do it? I don't want them to turn to their best friend. I want them to turn to their parents. The other thing, you can get very specific with websites. You can block things through different routers, different things. There's lots of great research available online. The different tablets have some security measures on them, but we've all also had to change some of that. So in my house, we have YouTube blocked because my young son loves to watch Lego videos of somebody else building the Legos, but that video leads to another video and maybe he doesn't need to be watching that video. And so we had to unblock that because he was doing school and some of those learning videos were on YouTube. And so that process of taking some of that control back off because he had to do his schoolwork, then maybe it doesn't get put back on, or then he maybe is looking at things he shouldn't be looking at. And so I think it's just having the communication that if he sees something that he questions, he talks to me about it. He asks me about it. And I can hope that if he's bringing those type of things to me, then if something bigger happens or something that he questions, then he turns to us and not a search engine to find the answer.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a false security that can come with, well, it's a kid's app. What bad thing could happen in a kid's app? It has a G rating. We look at some of those things, or I guess it's an E for everyone, but that means it's an E for everyone. And if it has chat features, if it has, that's where people are, unfortunately, that's where pimps and people who groom people for sex trafficking are looking for kids. So it's always important. I think what you said about having open conversations and being able to talk about little things that seem unimportant mean that our kids are kind of come back and talk to us about the big things when the big things happen, and not get that information from their friends, but get it from us. And there's so many places in the world that applies right now too, that we need to be thinking about. So Kristen, we talked about while we don't know exactly what's happened in the last couple of months with sexual assault and sex trafficking, we have some good guesses. If somebody has experienced something, or they experience something in the next 2 weeks, if something has happened, what do people need to do to get help?
Absolutely. And real quick, just to touch on, we don't know what's happened, but we do know that sexual assault is not a crime of passion. It is a crime of control. And when people have uncertainty and there's been a loss of job and it was probably already a bad relationship, those things can turn worse very, very quickly. And so we try really hard with our clients to give them back control because they've lost so much of their control. And so that's one of the things we've definitely seen through this with our survivors is any time that they lose control, that's very traumatizing for them. And so we try really hard to give them back as much control as we can. I tell everyone, if you see something, please say something, offer them help, offer them a resource. We are happy to be that resource, even if they're not a good fit for our organization or it's not sexual assault. We can make a referral to a partner organization. But if somebody you know has been victimized by sexual violence, please, please, please call us at Voice of Hope. You can reach us at 806-763-3232. We have a website, voiceofhopelubbock.org, where you can find more information. We're on Facebook. We're very, very easy to track down. You can talk to us on their behalf. We talk to secondary victims because sexual assault is not something that just affects the victim. It affects everybody around the victim. And so you can talk to us and we can give you services and we can give you help for what you're experiencing and what you're dealing with. And then we absolutely want to talk to them if they're willing to talk to us. But that is up to them. That is on their time. And we will be very respectful of what they would like to hear, what they want to participate in, and what services they're interested in receiving. If you have been assaulted within 120 hours and would like to receive a SANE exam, you can go to any emergency room in Lubbock and we will be called, as well as our sexual assault nurse examiners. And that is the time frame for collecting evidence. So if it has happened recently, we would encourage you to reach out and to get to the emergency room so we can collect that evidence and we can make sure that you get the medicine, that you're protected.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing all of that. And we will make sure that we put the phone number and the link to y'all's website when we post this so that you guys have access to that. Kristen, I want to thank you. This is a hard topic. And every time we sit down to talk or we sit down in front of a group to share, it's never an easy topic. This is not something that it's easy to hear about. It's not something that most of us want to recognize that happens in our community. Because it's hard and it's not something that it's not fun to talk about. It's a hard thing to talk about. So folks who have stuck with us this far and really watched all of this and been listened in, we thank you for taking the time to have the hard conversation along with Kristen and I. We always want to keep having these conversations because we want to make sure that everybody in our community is safe. And if something does happen, that they receive the support that they need. So thanks, Kristen. Thanks to your team and everything that you guys have kept doing right through the crisis and continuing to advocate for survivors. We appreciate all you guys are doing.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate United Way, and thank you for getting this information out on Facebook. Hopefully it'll get in front of somebody who has some questions and we can help them in some way. It is a hard conversation, but it is a conversation we all need to have.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kristen. So South Plains, thanks for tuning in today. We will be back with you soon to talk to another one of our community partners. Thanks, y'all.